It's a no-brainer to go ahead and continue your spring and summer garden into the fall. Plant seeds now, or transplant plants now, that you'll go ahead and be able to harvest. In some cases, you need to harvest before the final frost. In some cases, the frost actually helps the flavor. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is the 7 key reasons why you want to do a fall garden. Alright, reason number 1 is cost and inflation. So look, I don't know about you, but when you go to the grocery store, and I went by the produce section, organic vegetables are out of this world. So you can't get a cabbage, you can't get a cauliflower head, any of those things without $4 or $5. That's just crazy. If we equate $4 or $5 a head to what we can buy with seeds, so you may pay $2, $3 for seeds, for broccoli, for cauliflower, whatever it may be. We sow those, we grow them. I mean, we're saving, it probably costs pennies per seed. So you're saving $3, $4, $5 when you buy one of those things from the store versus you go ahead and grow it organically here in your backyard garden. So when we take a look at all the costs from inflation, whether that be your grocery store, you go to the gas station, I mean, we're all having to kind of re-examine our budget, having to cut back a little bit to make ends meet. One thing we can do is to go ahead and sow some seeds in our backyard garden, grow you some fall vegetables, and save a heck of a lot of money from having to go to the grocery store. So it's time to go plant a fall garden. Alright, reason number 2 is taste. And variety is kind of a sub part of that. They go hand in hand. So when you go to a supermarket, you buy the type of varieties that farmers grow for the supermarket. They're very limited. So they're not focused on taste. They're focused on things like time to market, spoilage rate. They're looking at growth, how fast the growth is. What you get at the grocery store is not what you can do out here in your backyard. You know, when I was never into cauliflower when I was a kid, heck, brassicas in general. So when I first started growing cauliflowers here in my backyard garden, I decided, hey, let's try it. You know, my wife probably will eat it. My kids, maybe. I'm not that into it. Even broccoli and some of the brassicas. So ever since I started growing out in my backyard garden, the taste, it's like 100 times better than what you buy at the grocery store. Part of the big reason is you can pick it at the peak of ripeness. So you pick it at that point, it gets no better from a flavor standpoint. Whereas a farmer who's going to the market, it may be in California, it may be up north. It's going to take 3, 4, 5 days to even get here. Then you got a couple days, they stock it. You got a couple days before you buy it. I mean, you may be looking at a week and a half, 2 weeks from when the point it was pulled. And then you still got a long time before you actually put it on your table. So garden to table, garden to jar, that's the way to go. And the very best taste you can get from vegetables is an heirloom variety out in your backyard garden that you pick at the riper freshness and eat. There's nothing better. So let's go plant our backyard garden. Alright, reason number 3 is your health. When I think about health, I think of 2 aspects. Number 1 is pesticides and other kind of chemicals that maybe own what you're eating, as well as the nutrients that are in that particular produce. So 2 different topics, so I'm going to cover those real quick. So farmers providing produce to your local supermarket, unless they're specifically organic, they definitely will use pesticides and other harmful chemicals on those plants and on your produce. Alright, and if it's organic, they're not supposed to, but the bottom line is you end up having pesticide residue on just about everything that you're able to get from the store. Organic, not as much. Your regular produce that you may get maybe up to 50% or even more, depending upon the type of produce it is. Regardless, the produce is supposed to be washed of all the residue, right? And there's studies that show that there's at least a trace amount of pesticide on a high percentage, again depending upon the type of produce, but a high percentage of the produce that you can get. So even if you wash off the produce You actually even still have some residue that's left in different areas. You know, there's no way unless you put I guess a super high spray of water that you could probably get all the pesticide traces off. Again, minute amounts after you wash it. When I think about getting produce from overseas, how well do they follow the process, right? How far do they follow the regulations about what pesticide to use, not to, whether you can or not, if it's organic? And look, so those vegetables, when they come in country, they're tested, but they're not testing 100% of the produce. So just kind of makes you wonder just how well that is regulated, especially overseas. But even domestic, there's no way they can test everything. They'll sample test the way they normally do and try to figure out residue. Regardless, I don't want any pesticide residue in my body, my family's body, or anybody that I cook for. I'm staying organic as much as I can to try to avoid the pesticide residue to build up inside my body, which potentially can lead to health issues. Most important point is if you do grow in your backyard garden, you know what you put on it, you know what kind of fertilizer, if it's organic or not, you know what kind of pesticide, if you have to use a pesticide, whether it's organic or not. You know for sure, even if you buy at the grocery store, you don't know for sure that it's organic. It's supposed to be. If I grow it here and I pick it here, I know, absolutely know it's organic. And secondly, again, I'm talking about nutrients. So we pick our produce, our vegetables, right out of the garden here. We pick them at the peak of ripeness. Not only does that give you the best taste in the absolute, you know, the most optimum taste in the world, but it also gives you the most nutrients. So if you think about how long it takes to get produce to your plate. So domestic, you're talking 4 or 5 days from field picking to a grocery store. Overseas, you may be talking 2 to 3 weeks potentially. And what they do is they pick it early before ripeness. Then it gets to the grocery store. Within a couple days, they're going to stock it out into the store. And another couple days, it's going to sit on the shelf until you come by and get it. How long is that? Is that a week? Is that 2 weeks? 3 weeks? Nutrients do decrease once it's picked off the vine, picked off the plant, put in a box and shipped across country or across the world to get to your grocery store, and then for you to actually buy it and get it to the plate. That's why I'm a strong proponent of garden to plate, garden to jar. We know it's organic, we know it's healthy, so let's get our fall garden planted in your backyard. All right, number 4, cooler weather. It's hard to believe because right now it's probably about 9 degrees, but earlier in the week we actually were in the upper 80s down into the 60s a little bit. I mean, that's just been a relief from the temperature that we've been suffering here where I'm at. So we're talking, we've been multiple months for at least 9 degrees, sometimes 95, 96, 97, upwards of that, and then the heat factor's above 100. So we've been kind of in a deep heat cycle here. Nevertheless, we're now starting to cool down. In fall, it will definitely cool down. So this weather pattern will make it much easier for us to do our work out here in the garden. And on top of that, the cooler days, cooler nights, and kind of the radiant pattern we get into the fall really helps establish our new plants. So as you plant your plants in the middle of summer and the spring, those seeds have a difficult time, and then the transplants have a difficult time adapting to the heat. But this cool weather in the fall is going to do nothing but help you start your seeds, start your transplants. Between the cooler weather, especially at night, and then some good rainfall, just get you in a better position to have success with your fall plants. And you don't have to sweat near as much, as you can see I'm doing right now. And in short, it's a whole lot more fun being out in your garden without sweating and worrying about sunburn. So let's go plant our fall garden. All right, number 5 is less watering you have to do. So the fall means less heat. It means shorter days, cooler weather. All that combined versus your spring or summer. So you have such an evaporation issue from the heat that we're stressed to make sure that we go and water, maybe not once but twice a day. Now I use my automated watering system, and I'll put a video down and link to that. But even though I have an automated watering system once a day, a lot of times in the summer I'll have to go out and water a little bit more in certain plants, certain beds. In the fall, you really don't have to worry about that quite as much. Now, if you don't have an automated watering system, you come out here watering by hose. Hey, I like doing that too, just because you end up going out and looking at the plants. You look at the plants in detail, you're able to find any pests that may be in place. Nevertheless, if you can't get out for one day in the fall, it's most likely not going to hurt your plants too bad. I encourage you to still water daily, but nevertheless, it's less stress on the plants and less stress on you as a gardener to have to water as much as you have to do during the spring and summer. So let's go plant our fall garden. All right, number 6, less pest. So when the fall season comes, many of your spring, summer pests, they're ready to kind of hunker down, winter down. They're through reproducing. And so there may be eggs that'll last throughout the winter. So many of those pests, like I said, you don't have to worry about at this point. That's not to mean that you won't have pest issues. I particularly have these cabbage and army worms that basically are caterpillars that go on your brassicas. They can be a huge problem if you don't find them early, but if you hit them early, it's not a big deal. But nevertheless, you do have less pest problems, which is just a relief from all the issues that that I've experienced. I always experience in the spring and summer. But you don't have to be quite as vigilant as you had to be during the summer or spring. You may have to spray a little organic pesticide if you have to, maybe a little neem oil, and BT. Don't forget about BT. BT, if you look for it, it's a spray, and it's a bacteria that actually gets into the caterpillar on the skin, goes in and affects them. Within 2 or 3 days they'll die. So, and that's organic. It's not going to hurt you or your plants or anything like that, or even if you don't spray it directly on a bee or pollinator, it's not going to hurt them either. So think about that. Less pest in your fall garden than it would be in a spring or summer situation. So let's go plant your fall garden. All right, lastly, number 7 is less weeding. And I know everybody would love less weeding, especially me. And that's because one of the tasks that I always have to take in my garden, whether it be in the walkways or whether it be actually in the raised beds, but you got to go through and weed. That's the best idea about mulching, and I use pine straw and mulch my walkways. Keeps the weeds at bay to some extent, but you're still going to have weeds come through. You also have your raised beds. That's where I always make you use a leaf mulch, and I've tried this hardwood mulch I got from Clegg's, kind of the bulk hardwood. I like the leaf mold better, but you can't always, if you ain't got a bunch of trees, you can't always get leaves, be able to use that as a mulch. But nevertheless, either one works pretty good. I just prefer leaf mulch. But as much as we mulch weeds, there's a reason why weeds are so survivable. That's why weeds are everywhere, because they find a way to get their seeds out on the ground and grow more weeds. So regardless of what we do from a mulch standpoint, we're going to have the opportunity to weed our walkways as well as our raised beds. However, the winter with the fall temperatures just helps you out a little bit from having your weeds take off as fast as they would. You have just a little less of heat. You have shorter days during the fall. That really helps you out from having a less issue with weeds. You still will have weeds no matter what, but it helps, it pretty much diminishes somewhat the need to do weeding in your garden or in your walkways. And hey, the less work is what I'm talking about, right? So let's go plant some seeds in your fall garden. So this was a lot of fun. If you found this video informative, hey, please go ahead and subscribe, like the video, feel free to share it as well. And if you do like this video, you may want to take a look at another video I got a link for below. That's planting fall vegetables in Louisiana, brassicas and more. Just gives you a really good idea on what the best way to go about planting some of your brassicas, as well as other fall plants in your backyard garden. As I always remind you, make memories with family and friends. Do it now rather than later. And as always, I will see you on the next video.